Hello and welcome to a brand new series, Build Like an Artist. In this series, we will be covering basic art principles and art skills to help you in your journey to become a pro Minecraft builder. In today's video, I will be covering the number one skill that I think you need to learn in order to become a better builder in Minecraft. Now, there is so much that we could cover in this video, which is why it's going to be a series and not one video, because it would literally be impossible to cover it all. This first principle is a little bit difficult if you don't have a lot of art knowledge or experience. However, it is without a doubt the most important skill. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about learning how to use reference. Now, what does this mean? In the visual arts, using reference is the practice of using source materials or objects to inspire or inform the artist in the creation of their artwork. Let's break this down. Generally speaking, there are three main types of reference. There is same medium reference, different medium reference, and real life reference. Now, medium in art refers to the material that you're using. So, for example, watercolor paints versus acrylic paints versus drawing, like a pencil drawing versus a sculpture. So in our case today, our medium that we're using is Minecraft. So a same medium reference would be maybe another Minecraft build that you saw that really inspires you, or that you really like the block palette. Now, this is great for beginners because if you don't really know how to build in Minecraft, it can be really overwhelming to even know where to place blocks to make it look good. So if you are copying someone else's build, this gives you a great opportunity to just kind of get a feel for it. It's the equivalent of doing a paint by number. The hard work has been done for you, you just have to fill it in. The downside is that you're not, this has a ceiling. You're not really creating this. It's not really your build. You're copying it. So this can be a great learning tool for people, but I think a lot of people get stuck doing this. They get stuck just copying builds, and then they don't know how to make a build on their own that's just as good. So real life reference is pretty self-explanatory. It means that you are using a real life object, building, whatever it is. An example of this would be, let's say you love the Eiffel Tower and you want to maybe recreate it in Minecraft. The pros of this is that you're getting a very realistic source for your images, for your reference. However, the con is that it can be really overwhelming to convert a real life object into Minecraft. There is a lot of detail in real life images, and it's impossible to get that much detail in a block game. And now for the very last type of reference, we have different medium reference. And this one is my favorite for a lot of reasons. So different medium means we're not using Minecraft as reference. We're using a different art form. So my favorite art form to reference is concept art, but you can reference anything. You can reference movies, you can reference video games, you can reference so many different types of art. It's really whatever you want. So for example, let's say you just played Elden Ring and you just absolutely love Elden Ring. You can use that as your reference and recreate it in Minecraft. One of the really amazing things about using different medium references in Minecraft is that it's already artwork. So you can usually, if you like it, it means it's good artwork. It has been idealized in the proper way. There's probably good composition, good color theory, etc. because the original is made by a professional artist, and your build has the potential to be as good, if not better. The one major downside to using concept art especially is in an age of AI art, sometimes art you find online doesn't actually make sense when you're looking at scale and proportion, and it can be really confusing to dissect those images in a way that makes sense. Also, sometimes artwork can be a little bit too stylized. Maybe you're looking for a more realistic look or a specific feel. Maybe the art that you're looking at is a bit too cartoony or a bit too detailed for what you can actually achieve in Minecraft. So I just want to clarify, using reference doesn't specifically mean that you copy something exactly. It doesn't necessarily mean you're rebuilding something that's identical to your reference. So it's more meant to be an inspiration and a guide when you are creating your artwork. So if we're using the Elden Ring example again, maybe I'm really inspired by this castle from Elden Ring, and I'm also inspired by this block palette I saw on YouTube. And I can also look at real life references of castles to see, what do real castles look like? What types of materials are castles made out of? What do they look like when they're worn down and they've been battered by rain and the elements and all these things? I would argue that the best artists use references from multiple different sources. They don't just copy one specific thing. They use reference as a tool to make their own art, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. I'm breaking down how can you use different types of references and how to bring them into Minecraft to build the build of your dreams. Okay, how do you actually use reference? Now that we've gone over what reference actually is, I'm gonna show you step by step how to do this in Minecraft. So you have probably / hopefully seen my honey farm video. This is the honey farm here. How did I build this? I used a piece of concept art, and I will put that up on the screen right now. I love this concept art so much, and as you can see, this building from this concept art is giant. It's way too much. I didn't need a build that was this huge for my honey farm. I just wanted something small, but I really loved the shapes and the color in this piece of art. So what I did is I found this photo that I loved. Okay, that's step 1. Find your reference that you love. Step 2, crop, cut, edit, whatever you need to do to make this reference work for you. So if you want to build this whole thing, go right ahead, right? Why not? Do whatever makes you happy. For me, I wanted to crop it to just be this little section here because I knew that that was going to be good enough for my needs. Okay, so that's step 2. We edit the reference as needed to make it work for our specific situation. Step 3. Now this step is optional, but I think it's super helpful, especially if you're a beginner. Use a grid overlay. Now there are a lot of ways that you can add a grid overlay to your images. Google search grid overlay or add grid to photo, whatever. Make sure you don't get any viruses, please. I don't want to be responsible for that. There's lots of ways to do this, but the idea is that you use a grid overlay on top of your image to break it down into essentially Minecraft blocks. So how do we do this? First of all, we want to decide the scale. So one of the ways that I like to do this is look at the image and figure out the doors. So that's kind of a weird thing to talk about right now, but look at the size of the doors or the windows. I wanted the doors and the windows to be pretty proportionate. So I just treated each window like it was about 1 block big, right? It's about a square. So we go around 1 block. From there, we have this grid that tells us how big our building is going to be, roughly. It's not an exact science. It's not going to work perfectly every single time because real life is not made up of perfect squares, but it gives you a really good baseline. So we're using this grid overlay, and I would just save this photo or even like screenshot it, whatever works for you. And you can play around with this too. Like, so for example, for doors, if I see a door in the image, I'll usually do either 2 blocks tall or 3 blocks tall and kind of see which one works better for me. And from there, I kind of have something to base my scale off of. And especially when you're looking at AI art, sometimes the scale is a bit off. So it's good to kind of tweak it and experiment and see where you can go with it. So in this example, I made the windows 1 block tall and I went from there. And then it's basically just like math. Like you're just breaking down this image into blocks and making the proportions feel more or less the same. Now, this is artwork, so you still have artistic license. You still have the ability to change things to add emphasis where you want it. So for example, in the reference image, right in the front here, there's like 2 sets of windows, and there's this paneling that's happening between them. And I don't have any way of doing that in Minecraft. So what I did is I just created a strip. I just kind of cut it myself. Also in this image, there's 3 windows in these little areas, and I've chosen to do 2 because it kind of kept my proportions right. Like I felt if I went with 3 windows, it made it really long, and I wasn't actually able to get the proportions that I wanted. So you kind of I use the windows as a baseline, but then really I'm looking at the overall height and width and the shape, and then I'm adding my detail in afterward. So the next question is, you have your rough shape, you have your rough outline of your build. What building blocks are you going to use? Now, you could look at this and say, okay, I'm going to just make the whole thing, this is like a light beige, so I'm just going to make the whole thing light beige. But when you're looking at the reference, there's actually, it's not just light beige. Like there's some areas with shadow, there's some areas with dirt or rust, whatever these types of colors here are. There's this roof here, which is like a combination of different beigeish, brownish tones. There's all sorts of little details happening. There's little flakes coming off the window here. We don't have the option of putting this kind of detail in Minecraft. Like it's like the same situation as the paneling. There's nothing that's that fine of a detail. So you want to create an equal sort of visual noise. Now, I honestly, looking back at this build that I made, I think this is a little bit too noisy. I loved it at the time. I still like it, but I think it's a little bit too noisy. And I think it would be better if it was just toned down just a little bit. So this is where it does get a little bit more complicated, because I wanted to create the same kind of visual detail and visual noise, but that's very difficult to do when you are limited to individual blocks. So one of the ways that I like to do that is by using block variety, specifically color, contrast, that sort of thing. So the next tool that we're going to be using as a baseline is called hue blocks. Now, I will leave the link for this in the description. I'm sure you've probably heard of this before. Everyone is losing their minds over this tool, including me, because it is so helpful. However, it is not perfect, specifically because we just don't have every single block color in Minecraft. So if I want this really nice baby blue color and I go and I color pick this, we don't have that color, right? So that's where it gets a bit challenging, and I like to use this as kind of a base, and I tweak it from there. I kind of tweak it around. So what I like to do when I'm color picking these reference images is I go from the lightest tone to the darkest tone within one material. So for example, I will color pick this wall here, which is being, bathed in this beautiful sunlight. And then I will pick one of these shadowy tones over on the side here. And then it gives me this beautiful gradient that I can use. And I use my own artistic license you can remove blocks by clicking on them. And I also will I kind of have a visual library in my own head of what blocks go well together, and I'll sometimes just throw a block in that I know will suit this, but that does take some time and some practice. So this is a super great tool to start with. So now that you have your shapes, you have your rough blueprint of at least one side of the building, and you have the block palette that you're using, now you just have to start building. And this is the part that takes practice, and I would say start in creative, especially if you've never really used reference like this before. Start in creative. And the really important thing about using reference is to really observe. So I know we're talking about a building in this scenario. It's the same kind of principle as if you've ever, drawn a tree, right? You're like, oh, I'll just draw a tree. And then it looks like this. And it's like, well, I understand that that's a tree, but it doesn't really look like a tree. And it's probably because you didn't actually look at a tree when you were drawing that tree. So that's kind of what we're doing here. We are drawing a tree. We're drawing this building in Minecraft blocks, and you have to do it in a way where you are going to be sacrificing some detail. You are going to be, you know, it's like you can't draw every single leaf on that tree, just like we can't build every single detail in this reference image, but you can make it feel the same way by using color and contrast and visual noise and these sorts of things. Now, this wouldn't be a building tutorial video unless we did some actual building. So what we'll be doing here is I'll actually be building that example that I showed earlier, because we've already done most of the steps for this image. We've found our reference. We didn't really need to edit it in this case. I'll be doing some editing on the fly, of course. We have our grid overlay, and I have used hue blocks as a kind of rough guide, and I've come up with this block palette to use. I know that the house in the image has this like really nice minty green color, but shy of the copper blocks, we don't really have anything like that. So maybe I'll try to throw this in, but honestly it's too dark, and don't think that we'll be able to blend these two together. So I might just have to include a little bit of minty green somewhere, just because I love the color so much. So we have everything that we need. The last step is to actually build it. So I've got my grid on my image here. I've decided to go for a 3-block tall door at the bottom, and that should give us quite a lot to play around with. I have not actually built this yet. I don't have this planned out. I wanted a really honest demonstration of working through this technique, because there is a little bit of working through it. So let's just start with the frame. I'm just going to quickly lay this out. So in my reference image, got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7, probably 8 blocks tall on this one side here. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we'll go like this and see how we do with that. And then how wide are we? We go about 8 again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I know the reference image has this little piece sticking out the side here. We might do something like that. We'll see. I'm just going to focus on the structure for right now. Okay, this piece here is about 5 blocks wide. So we'll do that. And then let's say about 1 block in. I think we'll have to go maybe 2 blocks in for the rest here. So this is about 2.5 blocks tall. So we'll go like that. Yes, we'll go like that, and then we'll build our roof up from there. And in this example, I am only using 1 reference image just because I feel like that is honestly the best place to start. In practice, I usually use more reference images, and like I mentioned, I'll use some from different sources, but just for today, to make it nice and simple, I'm going to show you how to break one down. Okay, and I think I've changed my mind. I think we do need to bring this. We'll just go like this for now. And this section here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks. So this is the equivalent of we're doing a sketch. You need to sketch out your form before you do your detail. It looks like this section might go back by 1, and it's about a block shorter than the roof next to it. That's a little bit more than the reference image, but I think it'll serve us well if we have that separation, if we kind of exaggerate that separation. 3 blocks, and then it pops back out like this. That looks pretty good. Okay, let's just work with that. And let's fill this in. And by going 3 tall on the bottom door, the proportions for this area work a little bit better. So I'm actually just going to put the door, it's kind of straddling these 2 areas here. So we're gonna put it here. Why not? Beautiful. And then we also have our door down here, which is about here. And I know a lot of people like to set their doors in, but in this case, with the way that the lighting is, I think it kind of the color gets lost. And that orange is such an important part of this build, that like pop of color. So I'm actually gonna make it flush with the front. And for now, again, this is a work in progress. We're working through this. We're kind of sketching it out and then adding details later. Now this window is kind of a weird one because it's like 1.5 blocks wide. If I go like this, it looks off compared to the door because it's like too short. If I go like this, that might work. It honestly doesn't look too bad. It's a bit high though, and when you're in here, you know, you can't really see outside, you know, something like this. But I don't know, I don't love it. You could do 2. You could do 2. That doesn't look bad either, right? So we have to work through this. This is kind of a problem. I don't want to say that it's a problem, but it's kind of a problem. So for right now, I think the thing that I liked the most from the outside is maybe this one, the roof in for this one first. So again, these balconies are kind of straddling 2 blocks. So I'm just going to make it 1 block and we'll see how we do with that. I think that looks pretty good. We've got a little door in here. I'm just going to throw in a door. Oh, these copper doors are so beautiful. Yeah, let's, why not? Let's use a copper door because I'm feeling fancy. Oh, that's beautiful. And you know what else we have happening here is we actually have a little bit of, it's not like a block shape. It's got a little bit of a lip, and that I think is perfect. Okay, and then to continue that lip, because if we go too boxy with this, it's going to look strange. So if we do that, do you see the difference between that and this? This looks so blocky. And yes, we're following the reference, but the reference is giving us this really beautiful shape here, and we're just completely losing it here. So you find creative ways to bring that shape back. And just to make it look a little bit nicer, I'm going to go like that. I think that kind of evens it out a little bit. And then we get that swoop effect that is so nice. Okay. I think this is better, and it is a little bit different than the reference, but it's giving us this kind of shape, right? If we're looking at this from down here, which the reference we kind of are, it's flattening that roof a bit, and in order to get that effect, I think we needed that little bit of depth. Okay, we also have a little window right here, and I wonder what would scaffolding look like in these. Does it look any good? The scaffolding trick doesn't usually look that good when it's just a 1 block window. I don't know about that. We'll just leave it blank for now. That's honestly one of the hardest things to do. I might end up using the gate, and we're just missing a little bit of that depth around the outside, so that's horrible. I hate that. And I know in the reference we have a window here. I would have to bring this out an extra block, which we might do, actually. I don't dislike it. It kind of suits the style. We can also pop that down like that. Ooh, I think I like that a bit better. Ooh, I think I just had an idea. Oh, look at that bad boy. I love him. I think I want this to be 2. And again, we're kind of losing that color, so we might do this instead. And then something else that we can do is this. And again, we're adding detail. We're adding detail that's not there, but it's because we don't really have the option of adding that depth. So we can see in the reference, the balcony on this side is just slightly lower than the balcony on this side. And the way that I'm going to achieve that here by using trapdoors. And that gives us that slight stagger. And something else that I'm paying attention to here when I'm looking at this reference is not just color, but texture as well. So these walls, we haven't textured this section yet, but these walls on the reference are very smooth. And then this little wooden area on the right here has that paneling. So I'm going to use spruce planks for this. See how that looks. And then immediately we're getting some texture happening here, this like texture difference. I think that's looking pretty good. I know in the reference it's a little bit higher. I almost want to bring it down a block. Is that better? I think that might be a little bit better. It's hard to say. We'll leave it for now. We'll leave it. This is kind of a tricky one because what I would want to do in this situation is have two maybe long windows, but I can't do that without sacrificing the symmetry. What if we did this? I think it's too much. It'll look like windows, but it'll be, yeah. Okay, I think that's the most successful one. So this area is a little bit daunting. So we're gonna wait till the end. We're gonna wait a little bit on that area, and I'm gonna start bringing my texture into my wall now. Like I said, I usually do this a little bit earlier, but I feel like when you're starting out, the most important part is getting the bones right. It's sort of going from this like really pale beige to this green color. And again, we don't have the green, so I'm just gonna work my way down from this really pale quartz pillar down to this birch. So we are getting a little bit of that color, but I'm also trying to be aware of where the colors are actually happening. So you'll notice there's a little bit of a green, like a darker patch right here. And we also have in the reference image, we have this shadow here. Now we do have the shadow here because of shaders, but what if I didn't have shaders? I want to keep that in mind. What if I didn't have shaders? You can add that depth in with a different, like a slightly darker color, and then you go in with your really bright color, and you're almost painting in that shadow. So that's what I'm doing here. And then we go a little bit darker. It starts to transition. It's also not a straight across transition. You can see it kind of angles. Bring my darker mushroom stem in again and start texturing like this a little bit. And then same thing with here. We've got this shadow down here. The bottom is kind of dark, but then we get this little pop of light right here. Maybe just transition this just a little bit better. And there we go. That is one of the ways that you can add texture in. I'm looking at the shadows. I'm looking at the colors. I've got, you know, my darker areas here. Okay, I changed a couple little things. I took away one strip of blocks here and I switched this to oak. At this stage, we're in the detail stage. I would say it's just looking a little bit lifeless and we need to spruce it up a little bit. So we're gonna just start adding in some of this greenery because I feel like it is a really important part of this building. It's one of the reasons why it looks so good. And we'll add maybe a couple pots. I don't like this because this is blocking that door. Here's another cute trick that you can do. So you can kind of see in the reference image that there's some greenery poking through this. We can't really do that. So I'm gonna delete it and add a little bit of vines, and then it kind of looks like the greenery is poking through. It's kind of a hack. But from a distance, I think it really works. Now, something that I don't like that's happening is we've got a lot of vertical lines happening. So we've got like green and we've got like flower pots. So to break this up, I'm going to remove this and I'm actually going to put it right here. And then suddenly that is so much more interesting because we've got this kind of, it's a different line. It's not just straight and across. Bush right here, and then we're also going to add a bit of grass around. It's hard to see in the reference, so we'll just do that and then kind of see. We've also got some sort of weird ladder thing here. I don't know what that's supposed to be, but we can add a detail that's similar. So we can try an actual ladder and see how it looks. I think that looks kind of good, actually. I was going to say we could also do maybe one of my favorite blocks to use is like a loom or the chiseled bookshelves, because these add so much detail, and you could, in theory, go like that. And that also looks pretty interesting, or like this as well. Oh, I think that one might be my favorite. What if we do that and then we add that on top? Ooh. Oh, I like that. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it looks cool, doesn't it? And it's kind of the same thing as the reference. It's like, I don't know what that's supposed to be, but I like it. Also, there's some sort of weird thing that juts out. I think how does that look? Ooh, we could try a trapdoor instead. I think this was better. Yeah, I like that. I don't know. I think that's pretty cute. Okay, we also have some sort of hanging thing on the end here. Yes, look at that. I don't know what that's supposed to be, but it looks good. I also kind of like the idea of doing that. No, I changed my mind. I don't like the idea of doing that. Okay, so another thing that we have going on is we have this like weird little shelf thing here. Fortunately, I don't think we have anything like that, but what I can do is I take this material that I have for the wall and we go like this. Something else that I'm noticing here that's important is there's like a pipe. It's like a pipe going down like that, and then also some pipes here and like some pipes going around like that. So the closest thing we have to that is probably going to be iron bars. And let's just, what does that? I think that looks pretty good, actually. Something else the reference has that we don't have is this like wash station. So let's quickly see if we can make something that looks good. So one thing that I don't like is this kind of raw edge. So I'm actually going to use some iron trapdoors. It's hard to see in the reference, but it kind of looks like there's maybe like a tile or roof or something on there. So if we cap that off, that just makes it look finished using this. Because then we can bring it up the side here. Okay, I love it. There's like a little wash thing. So let's put a cauldron down. That looks pretty decent. Yeah, maybe here, and then the good old lever. Let's put that there. There we go. That looks better. And there's also this like little shelf thing. There we go. And then it just kind of gives the illusion that there's a space. What about birch? Is birch better? There is still a little bit more detail though. We have kind of a similar situation going on. There's some sort of pipe thing. So I'm just going to bring that, and that'll cap that off a little bit. It's, again, it's not identical, but we're adding in that detail. And what does this look like? I like that. So before, what we had, it just looked like it was supposed to go somewhere and it didn't. And by adding this, we're creating like a cap, and it looks like that's the end of it. Nice. And one other thing that I really like in this image that we haven't added is this like telephone pole. Telephone poles and like things with wires and all of that is like one of my favorite details. So we're going to, it kind of goes from a darker gray to a light beige, maybe an iron trapdoor. That looks pretty good. It looks good like that too. But we've got this separation in here that gives us the illusion of it being a light. And there's also like a little, not a satellite dish, but there's like some stuff happening back here. Do I like that? It's a little bit too busy. I feel like that gets the, that gets it across. The one thing that we hadn't really done is texture the roof at all. There is that little highlight happening in the reference image that I really wanted to capture. So I just added a little bit of variation there. So with all that said, I think we can call this one done. This is, I hope this illustrated what I mean when I say that you can really turn anything into a build in Minecraft. And The process just takes a little bit of time, but you end up with something that's completely yours. This was a little on the nose. We did try to copy the reference as closely as possible, and there's nothing wrong with doing that, especially when you're learning. In fact, when you're starting, I would recommend using maybe just 1 or 2 references, and then as you build your skill level, you can move on to creating things that are a little bit more original. But I'm still really happy with how this turned out, and I hope you are too. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I'm hoping that I gave you a relatively clear idea of how you can do this yourself with any image. More examples of reference images that I've used in this world is our beautiful nether portal here. I'm sure many of you probably recognize what this is based off of. It's based off of this image here of Petra. Everybody knows Petra, I think. Like, at least anybody who's watched Indiana Jones knows what Petra is. So I took this reference image of Petra and I made it out of sand instead of out of this like dark terracotta color. But I also included some texture because I wanted to. I don't know. Is it too much texture? Probably. I could have done a little bit better, but I honestly still love it. And this is another example where I used the grid method. I plotted out my size, but if you look at this reference image, you'll see what I'm talking about here with the windows and the door situation. These people are tiny. So if I assume that these people are the size of a Minecraft character and I build my grid, this building is like hundreds of blocks tall. And that's not what I wanted to do here. I wanted to make it a little bit more reasonable, just a little bit smaller scale. So I actually just adjusted my grid. So you adjust your grid to make it more of the proportions that you want. So my grid would have looked something more along these lines, and then I can see, okay, this pillar is about a block wide, this door is about 3 blocks wide, and you know, 5 blocks tall or whatever it is. And from there you're really just choosing blocks, and I chose my block palette and I kind of filled it in based off of some other reference images I had of wear and damage. Another spot that I used a reference image is, it's kind of tricky to see because this building is blocking it, but I used this reference image for this part of my build. You can see, you know, we've got the red square, we've got these kind of neutral tones, and I made some changes, right? That part up there is pink because the cherry wood came out and I really wanted to use it. And over here, you know, I'm using like copper and all sorts of things that aren't in the original, but I did use it as a reference for my shapes, and I went from there. So reference is just meant to be a guide. It's just meant to be, okay, these are kind of my bones of my building. How am I going to make this in Minecraft, and how am I going to make this my own? Now, before you all come for me in the comments, what happens if you try this and you suck? That's okay. And to be honest, it's expected. If you are brand new to doing this, it's the equivalent of me showing you a picture of a hand and telling you to draw it. It's hard. It's really, really hard, you guys. But it is like the most important skill for being a great artist, is being able to look at a reference and draw it. Realistically, all you need to be able to draw that hypothetical hand is a little bit more art knowledge and art skills to back this new skill that you are now developing, which is looking at reference. There is just so much that you still need to learn, and this is just the beginning of your journey. So if you are practicing this and you find that you are struggling, one of the issues that you're probably facing is color saturation issues, especially if you're using hue blocks to find a color that we don't really have in Minecraft yet. So one of the biggest tips I can give you is to either choose reference that is kind of a grayscale already, or at the very least neutral colors to start. Or if you are going off of something really colorful, convert your reference images to black and white, since we pretty much have every shade between white and black, and you'll be able to focus on the actual structure, the actual shapes and the contrast of the build instead of the color. The colors at the end of the day don't matter as much. Like my reference image, that was beige and I chose pink, and you know what, it works, but it's because it's kind of that same lightness quality that it's working. If that were neon pink, it might clash with this super vibrant red. That is going to be it for this video. I really hope it was helpful. I know that this is a really difficult skill to learn, and I will be posting more videos in this series to help you in your journey to becoming a pro Minecraft builder. But I felt like I would not be doing this series justice if I didn't start with this skill, because it truly is the most important skill that you can start developing right now. If you have any questions, any tips for your fellow builders, or any suggestions for me for future videos, please leave a comment below. I love to read all your comments, and I love you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.